Hello everyone, thank you so much for joining us tonight and welcome to Weber Gallery. My name is Fiona Rogers, I'm the London director here, and we're really delighted to currently be showing this brilliant exhibition 45 by Damian Heinisch. We're sorry that you can't actually be with us tonight, but we are really glad that we have both Damian and Michael Mack from Mack Books online to discuss this project in more detail. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our two speakers and then hand over to them. Michael Mack is the founder of London-based independent art and photography publishing house Mack Books. Michael has written, designed, edited and published nearly 500 titles, including some of the most defining art books of the past 20 years. Mack works with established and emerging artists, writers, curators and cultural institutions. In 2012, he established the first book award in collaboration with the National Media Museum in Bradford at the Wilson Centre for Photography in London. This annual Photography Publishing Award is open to photographers who've not had a previous photo book published. In the summer of 2020, Damian Heinisch was announced this year's winner by an independent jury. Our exhibition, 45, marks the start of an annual collaboration between Weber Gallery and Mack Books to present an exhibition of each year's winner. Damian Heinisch is an Oslo-based photographer with an MA in visual arts from Folkwang School in Essen, Germany. After spending his childhood in Poland and attending school in Germany, he moved to Norway in 2001. His work focuses on landscape, architecture, and space. He began by taking a traditional approach to his practice, but recently his work has evolved into a narrative confronting themes around identity and immigration, often exploring this subject through the lens of historical consciousness and emphasizing human experience. In 45, the artist weaves a political and historical personal journey through present-day Europe, inspired by the voyages of his grandfather and father in 1945 and 1978 respectively, which ultimately led to either their death or to freedom. The exhibition runs until the 29th of January and we will be COVID secure during that time, so we really hope that you'll be able to come and see us and come and see this wonderful exhibition. And so over to Damian and to Michael. Thank you.
Thanks, Fiona. Thank you very much and welcome everybody. Thank you very much for coming to hear us speak this evening. I'm very happy to be here with Damian Hirst, or Damian is in Oslo and I'm in London. I'm in my office, he's in his home. And we're just going to this evening talk a little bit about the process of making the book with Damian, but perhaps more interestingly about his project in general and certain of the elements of it. So, Damian, firstly, congratulations on your first London show at Weber Gallery.
It's amazing. Thank you very much, Michael, and thank you to Fiona for introducing us.
I'm very much looking forward to seeing it in a couple of days. Damian, perhaps we can start with just kind of a general question, which is an overall one, because your project is amazingly, well, it's extraordinarily ambitious in the sense that it takes a quite personal story, which in many ways encompasses both the history of Europe or a particular teleology, a particular narrative, and it expounds it to a contemporary context, which is a fairly universal experience in many ways. And it brings us down to a subject base which is relevant to almost every country across Europe and indeed across the world.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's related to the experience of the Second World War and the common memory, and I think that for myself, I had no choice actually. I own a document which was inherited by my father. And in a certain way, you have no choice not to relate to this. It's a book, it's a small diary. I actually brought it with me here.
Oh, I would love to see it. I've never seen it.
No, it's amazing because it's very tiny. I usually used to take it with white gloves. And I didn't find them today, so I allow myself to open it because I have such a big respect for this.
Yes.
I can show you this. This is
the
writing.
Yeah, perhaps explain precisely what this is, because it's the starting point.
Yes.
Of the journey in a sense.
Yes, this is the start of the journey. It's the diary which my grandfather wrote during his deportation, which started on the 16th of February in 1945 and continued to his death in a working camp in Ukraine in the 5th of October. And he describes every day. So from the day when he steps down from the stairs of his house and locks the door and says goodbye to his wife and his 4 children, to the day where he doesn't return. But in the end, he didn't write anymore. It was he was too weak. So and this document really describes all the stages through this deportation process. It's really intense to read.
From where? So he was, perhaps explain the geographical journey.
Yes, yes. He was born actually in a very special town. It's the town of Gliwice, which lies in Poland today. It was called Gleiwitz because it belonged to Germany at this point, and it was the border town between Poland and Germany. So when the Second World War started, it started actually in this town. It started in Gliwice. It was like the Second World War went on 1st of September from 3 points from Germany to Poland, and Gliwice was one of them. And in February 1945, the Red Army entered the border of Germany accurately at the same point, because from this point, actually, like the Second World War started for the public, not for the soldiers, but for the public actually. And 3 days after, all men between 18 and 50 needed to register themselves at the police station, and then they were brought into a camp first, and they were waiting for the fates. And 1 month later, they were loaded on wagons. I say loaded because it was cattle or wagons for cattle, for animals. And they were brought to a new destination. They didn't know what it was. They were told that they should go to Berlin and clean up the debris after the Second World War. But the locomotive was swapped suddenly towards the east, and they just went. So they were locked in this wagon for 10 days. And when the doors opened again, they were in Ukraine.
And just explain, what was the political or economic, perhaps, basis for the?
Yes, I think everything is based on the Yalta conference. Like this is like the base where Churchill, Stalin, and Roosevelt decided about how Germany after the Second World War will be divided up, and Stalin claimed like for compensation, he claimed to own the area around Poland as a buffer against the West, and he claimed as well that the people and the war captives should be used as compensation to build up a new places. That means that in principle, the humans could be used for everything what they wished for.
They were traded basically in the Yalta exchange.
Yes, yes.
As a resource, yes.
I'm sorry, I'm not an historian in that sense, so I try to explain it with my own words.
No, and your words are very clear, and even more so your grandfather's. I'm going to read. So at the back of your book are translations. Is an English translation alongside a German of small extracts from his diary, and it's extraordinarily touching, and at the same time quite scary because of the fact that it's so honest and blank and specific. The pain in my back is unbearable, and the medic has not come. A comrade took off my dressing and squeezed out the gushing pus. Others let me have their bandages. A fresh bandage is a true blessing. We travel so little. At 7 p.m., after 48 hours, we reached Krakow. Food same as yesterday.
He went with an open bag actually into the wagon, which happened. I think he had he got this during the first phase of his deportation when they were still in Gliwice. I think the food was not the best at this time, and a lot of people got like infections. And yeah, this is just like what happens. And you could have been killed actually by that. And when additionally to all this what followed after the transport, I mean, it was 40 people in one wagon, and in the middle was this what you can call toilet. It was a hole, and I just try to imagine really how this really works. Everything and these people kept socializing and helped each other, and I think they find really ways to not to lose their prides somehow, and come through this 9-day travel in an extreme cold, because it was a gruesome cold winter. And then actually everything first started. So I think it's I think we can't imagine what this
I agree. It's unimaginable, I think, to us. I think the words resonate and we understand them and we can empathize, but I think the reality of the difficulties that people going through migrations of this nature, especially forced migrations, it's impossible to fathom it. So jumping forward then to 1978, which is quite a leap of time, but it then brings it within your own remit. You were 10 years old at the time?
78, I was 10 years old, right? Yes. And it's very strange because straight from the beginning, when I was little, I don't know when conscious comes in your head and you understand, but I can remember a lot, actually. I remember not just smell, but how our flat looked like. I remember that that our flat was placed like 100 meters from the tracks of a train line, and we used to play and build our houses in the trees under the tree line, actually under the train line. They were like a small wood, and yeah. So I don't know. I think like the trains has always been with me around in my life, but at home there was a waiting situation for something else, that we should leave our space and move to another country.
Where were you?
And we were in a neighbor's town to Gliwice. It's called Zabrze, or it was called Hindenburg at this time. The situation at home was that actually my grandmother, she was the wife of my grandfather. She stayed actually in Gliwice because many people decided to flee. They just packed everything they could. Straight after the Second World War, actually, people were still allowed just to leave, but they decided to stay in almost empty flat because everything was robbed.
Yeah.
And so my father continues his life there, and he just grew up. He met my mom, so they married and they got 2 sons. And since then, when this was decided, they wanted to migrate, actually, to going back to a society which was German influenced. My father got unemployed because of these reasons. So in a certain way, he was like a political victim. I don't know how to call it. Many people lost their jobs. Just if you mentioned that you felt a kind of German belonging, you were punished. So he was alone at home, actually, like for several years, and always hoping to get this permission, because you had the chance to leave the country by being invited by a relative, and then you needed to send the paper to the state, and then you got the refuse or you were allowed. And I think they waited 10 years altogether in this situation. And I remember that I came home once and I picked it out from the post box, and it was standing 10,000 zloty, and it was an enormous amount of money which needed to be paid to the state. And I knew by then that something was different this time. And I remember my parents coming home, and they even didn't take off the shoes. They just went straight to the kitchen and read it and couldn't believe it. And then the whole process started, that our flat was dismantled, and we were just allowed to pack like 2 or 3 crates, very small crates, and just take everything what was necessary to start a new life. And everything was really, really uncertain. And then we suddenly were on the train, and I saw suddenly passing the backyard of the house I used to play from the train window. This is described in the book, actually. Yeah.
With family members waving you off, that must have been really difficult. What do you think it was about the particular circumstances, besides the obvious, for your father in terms of what happened to his father? What was it in terms of the desire to leave what was then Poland to move to Western Germany?
Yes, it's amazing, because I think that the whole culture changed. I mean, what we sometimes are not aware of, that what happened in this area there was that the whole culture changed. That means you needed to start to learn a different language. They even got different names. It was your home, and suddenly it wasn't anymore. And we're not talking now about soldiers and crimes and Nazis and whatever, but we're talking about the public, like the normal people. And it's I think many left because of maybe because of reasons of materialism, that it's like it was better in the West, it was always something to wish for.
Yeah.
But I think that my parents just wanted to give us their children a kind of perspective, because I think that there was a lot of corruption in the Eastern countries, and certain things were not possible if you were not supporters of political directions. And so I think it was not possible for him. So he just needed to go somehow.
Yeah, absolutely. And so that exactly the reasons that so many people desire to migrate, especially people living on these border areas where their identities are questioned and their tribes are unclear by reference to the status quo. We see this across the world at this moment in time. And then you chose then this led through your life. I can understand how that document would have been a dominating piece of your family history.
Yes.
And you decided as an artist to then use this as the basis for this work.
I think that many of these happenings just write themselves in our DNA. I think I remember myself being like an hunted animal. In that sense that photography was a kind of compensation. I call it always for love. That photography went really so far that there was a meaning in photography for me. First, maybe not in the beginning. In the beginning, it was just joy and very honest. I mean, just to do whatever you feel for. And I got it actually inherited by my father and my grandfather. He was a great photographer. I have so much material. He photographed his family, and it's so beautiful photographed. So I'm really proud of him. And actually, it's amazing, because there is something else here I can show you. It's an image he took of his family when it was 3 years. When you turn the picture, you see it's 1943. This as well was maybe something he saw in the end, because he had this picture in Ukraine with him. And this longing, photography is such a longing somehow, and it builds up so much connected to memories in us. And I see like photography as a ventile, as something what can be projected out of me. And I think this journey I photographed when I documented my train journey to Ukraine was actually what I've been doing there.
Just to take a step back though, because I think you've touched very delicately there on one of the primary issues of the project, but also that is kind of at the base of much of this history, which is the sense of not just of displacements, but of uncertainty, of almost shame in terms of your position and that history, and how,
yes.
you know, what you're allowed to think, what you actually think, and what your public persona can be by reference to your private thoughts.
Yes. Being Germany, mean, like you speak about this, it's very odd because somehow I actually don't know where I belong. It's a question of what is my belonging, Heimat. We have a very special word in German for this, Heimat. Because I grew up in Poland, this area was German. I moved to Germany and I live in Norway, actually. So I have like 3 families. And I think to be really honest, that I felt, of course, this concern of being a German doing this project, but I didn't feel ashamed actually, because I think it is about to overcome a certain fear and say and understand that the initiative I take is actually for families. It's not about being German or not German. This is something what concerns really almost every nation.
Absolutely. And I think that, to be completely honest with you, that the success of the story is because of the fact that it's entirely personal. It traces this very specific trajectory, which is imperfect and very sad and very courageous at the same time as being quite celebratory. It's very much a life story, and it goes through these through 3 generations to explicate a certain aspect of the history of Europe. And in so doing, it's actually entirely personal and yet quite political.
Yes, of course.
And achieve that, which is a difficult thing to do. So when was it that you started thinking and started photographing by reference to this particular train journey?
This train journey. I photographed the train journey in 2013. Maybe it's good just to mention that the book, 45 book, need to be seen like in a context of a long-term project, which I've been now. I'm finishing it now, and it took me almost 10 years. So there will be a sequel to 45, but I did it in the end actually. So that means the last step in the project was to really go to Ukraine, and I was really scared. I was so full of fears to go there, and I was constantly photographing with my stomach. So it was not my head, but it was really a stomach solution. And I always took the train to the 4 destinations, because my family is spread over like 4 countries, or the history of my family, the happenings are spread over 4 countries.
Which 4?
It's Poland, actually it's Germany, it's Ukraine, and it's where I live. So it's Norway, I used always the train to travel to all these destinations. I don't like flying, so it was natural. But on the other way, I was always connected to the train. And one day, I was looking out of the window, and it was so beautiful, because I saw this window and this framing around it, and I said I should document my journey actually. So it didn't come from a project I have somehow seen somewhere. I know that projects exist, many actually. I noticed after the work, when the material was done actually, that, oh my God, you thought you were so original, you know, and then suddenly you see one project after the other, people photographing out of the train. I mean, we know obviously the main project with Paul Fusco's funeral train, but this was not something what was in my mind. So I started to document the journey, and since my main project is connected to the 4 seasons, I did the train journey as well through 4 seasons. So I went to Ukraine in spring, Germany in autumn, and Norway is obviously the winter, the always winter, and Poland was the summer. It's like the childhood, and this became the journey. Yeah.
So, but just to explain specifically, you didn't simply retrace your grandfather's journey. Your journey was broader than that.
Yes, it was broader. So that means like the part between Norway and Germany, where my father lives actually, because the German part is connected to my father's life. This is something it's completely on its own. But the train journey from my father to Poland is as accurate as I could go actually. And the train journey to, from my grandfather was as well somehow. I didn't know where he ended up because he never mentioned it, but the final stage where he died finally, this is mentioned in a document actually. He didn't write it himself, but it's mentioned in a document. So I went to Debaltsevo, which is like 80 kilometers from Donetsk. It's toward Leningrad, and was searching for a grave where I could just like lay some flowers. So this was like the last stage somehow.
And you've touched on the idea of the train window. You know, this theatrical second framing beyond the camera frame that allows you to use the lit stage beyond it. Yes, perfectly. And yes. Is it true that is it inevitable that you took a large number of images and then the process was one of editing to work out what best represented a journey?
Yes, I ended up with approximately 120 rolls of 35mm film. I wanted to work with 35mm. I used to work like with film based on my personal projects, and the 35mm is as well. It's something completely else than working digital. With digital, I have possibilities to react the whole time, and with 35mm, you need to limit yourself, and you need to live with your memories. It's connected to memories and images which start to live in you. It's as well images who just passed by and you were not fast enough to catch it. It's really painful sometimes, and that means I ended up with approximately 4,200 images. And I put them in the archive because I was working on something else. And they were lying there for 2 years. And then I realized I want to do something with the images, because there were so many images which really meant something for me. And at this point, I joined a workshop actually, and try to get to a result. And this is where 45 actually emerged. So.
Who did you work up with, out of interest?
It was with Niklas McLean and with Alexandro Calabrese. He's like a foam talent, and Niklas is a publisher himself. Yeah. And they were offering this workshop, and I found it really interesting because it just to getting an overview what a photo book is. What I've been collecting photo books since I was 15, but I think something changed. Like in 2010. I think the direction went into a different, it went into a different direction. I was not aware of this. So 45 in the end was the outcome. And somehow I was asked or forced almost to crop my images. And this was...
Why forced? That's interesting. Why do you think it's forced?
Because I in the first part refused to do that. Because my images were as I planned them. It was with the frame actually, like the poster. You get this poster with the book. So this is the only image which is uncropped in the book, and of course the stations on the back side of the poster. But there was really big discussions about cropping the images or not. And then I decided, since I am a teacher and I demand some process from my students, I said, be a good student now and just do what they tell you. And this is how I started. So I really investigated each image of the possibility to bring it together with another one. And this is how the spread evolved. So it's always a spread in between. So it's a communication between two images, which are fragments actually.
And it's important to explain, because the work came to us fully formed, that the design of the book is really quite extraordinary, and it uses a Japanese fold,
yes,
which facilitates an image effectively across the back of the fold.
yes.
And so these details, these image fragments, are then combined into what seems like this film strip almost. So
yes, yes,
closer to that, or the idea of light passing in front of you through a zoetrope,
yes.
where you see these flickering pieces, like sitting in a train window, for example.
It's actually, you can go around the book the whole time. So because the back, the book starts at the front and ends and with the last picture, and then it starts again from you can go around and around. But the Japanese binding was with me since the beginning. First, of course, you are very like excited about the aesthetics, but then I understood like form follows function, that you should not just use a Japanese binding because of reason of aesthetics. And it really had a meaning in the book, because I can place some images over several pages. And I think the longest is around 6 pages, this group in the middle. And it gives a feeling of travel and continuity. So it really gives a direction. And it was exciting to split the images and really work physically with these images.
And so you were able to submit to us as the jury of the first book award,
yes,
perfectly printed, perfectly
yes,
bound
yes.
book, because you had printed 500 copies?
I printed 300.
300 copies of the book, and so you sent it to us, and it almost seemed too perfect. And the reality is, from my recollection, we changed one thing, which was a paper issue, which we thought might improve it slightly. But other than that, the book that you won the first book award with is the book that we then published, which is quite unusual.
I was so scared to go to London, to be really honest. I never told you, but I was thinking, oh my God, they're going to take the book apart and they will republish it as something totally else. But I was so surprised and happy actually that and I think this, what we brought, these 2 changes into the book, were spot on. And I really love that both are different, but both have their own, right somehow, I think. The process of making this book actually was a nightmare. It was really amazing. It was really long. It was really long, and it brought insomnia in my life. And making your first book, it was really a nightmare. And I felt like, yeah, it was something like a metaphor of that, what I described in the book. Yeah, so somehow it needed to be earned.
Absolutely. Well, I hope you're sleeping better now. Perhaps you could talk us a little bit, take us through the installation of the exhibition, because I think one of the things that really interests me about your practice is that you don't think purely as a photographer, in the sense you're not thinking purely as still images framed and on the wall, or a book sequence which is full frame images on with white borders. You make film as well. You think about slideshows, etc. And I think that's an important thing to understand in relation to the way you approach your ideas conceptually.
Yes, it's really. I think the project always starts from a new perspective. And a book is not an exhibition, so you need to relate to the space. And through this communication, I could not travel to London now, so that means that we really communicated with Fiona from Weber Gallery. And by the way, it's such an honor for me to be able to exhibit 45 in this beautiful space. And I talked to my students about Weber and the photographers, so I was very happy. And I decided actually to bring the representation of photography, or how photography was represented through all this year, into this exhibition. So you will find a lot of like mixed techniques, approaches to to photography. So you will see that you will see sea print, something what we really were used to through many years, digital reproduction. You will see slides, actually, something what's so beautiful. The installation I will bring with me into the exhibition is actually the original material, uncropped. So that means it will contrast the images which are on the walls, which are from the book, are 6 chosen spreads, which actually are like a small representation from the book through the whole journey, which will hang quite close together and be the representation of the book, while the slideshow introduce as well sound into the room, into the space, which is so important with it. So you will see the carousel projectors moving around. It's like wheels from wagons, and you will hear the tracks while you observing the lights, actually. And what's interesting is that all the slides are created actually through the digital way as well, except of the documents, of the projector who really projects the documents, which are really the original lights of the documents, actually, because it's slides. And then in the end, I have chosen as well to send in a large image. It's from the main project, actually, from the sequel of 45, which is photographed in Ukraine, in Donetsk, in 2013, 8 months before the new conflict started. I was visiting the grave, and I photographed with the tricolor techniques. That means 3 black and white images are exposed with the 3 filters and becoming a color photography. And I did it because I was searching for adequate representation of photography in the unique countries, Germany, Poland. So each of them has a different technique. And Ukraine was tricolor because Alexei Prokudin-Gorsky went in 1920 and photographed the Empire of the Tsar in this technique. So I was searching for something what was authentic and adequate to approach the scene. And and additionally, you give the control of the process somehow away to photography. It's just happening, and you can't control everything. And I think this was something like a metaphor for this, what happened to my grandfather in Ukraine as well. So I always search for something what's authentic to the scene. Yeah. So and all this different images hopefully will play good together, nicely together.
No, they do. It does make an extraordinary installation. Just can you return to what you started out saying, actually, which is talking a little bit about the kind of final iteration of this. You say you've come to an end. So where have you taken it to now? And in order to put it down, so to speak, to finish it, what is the final part of it that you mentioned?
The final part, you mean, of the whole project? Yeah. I hope, I know they will accumulate in 4 books, actually.
4 books?
4 books, yes, which each book will have its own, happening placed on the timeline, connected to a generation, connected to a country, connected to a season and an element. So there will be more details to come soon, but each of them, it's a conceptual, it's really a conceptual structure over everything, but it's not a driving force. The driving force is really the love of photography. I think it's really something what brings joy, brings fears, brings despair, brings a lot of feelings, actually. Photography is very, very connected to feelings for me. Indeed. And I hope it's 10 years now, and I hope really I have this small experience with making my first book in 2 versions, actually. It was not easy actually because when we printed 45 with Mack, it was in Denmark, and we were not allowed to go, and they made a brilliant job, and it looks beautiful. I'm so happy really with the result, and this will this will help me to understand maybe the next step.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, we're very excited to see the next stage.
Yeah, me too. Thank you. Yeah, me too.
Thank you so much for a wonderful collaboration, and congratulations on both the book and the exhibition.
Thank you, Michael. In the end, am I maybe allowed to just say thank you to some people?
Sure.
Yeah, of course. To Fiona to give me the possibility to use the space, actually. To the jury, included you, of course, in the jury, and the fantastic team you really work with, Jeff, Leaf. They have done such an amazing job, and especially Jess, which were really with her hands over the first book award. And I would really say to so many people, just join it. It's now time again to send in, and it's amazing. But and I would like to say thank you to sorry that I have just to Andreas, to Christian, to Simon, to Agnes, to Mark, to Hans Olaf, to Tommy and Felix, who helped to bring up the pictures on the gallery wall, and Niklas and Alessandro, of course, and in the end, my father and my aunt, who really supported me through the whole way through the whole project.
Wonderful. Thank you, Damian.
Thank you, Michael.